Today we are going to be recapping our experience down at Uncle Bobo's Bonanza, the Garage Hammer tournament we went to down in the Springs this last weekend. We had a great time. There was great food, great people, and it was just such an amazing event. Phil, how did your weekend go?
I was very pleased with my weekend. We didn't reach the goal of 3-0. We went 2-1. We lost our final game, a very tight one. And to those who may know John Kilcommons, he's a regular down here and a top 200 ITC player and an exceptional Tau player. So I lost by 2 points. It was a tight game, came down to the very wire, but I was very pleased with that and the tournament overall. What about yourself, Lane?
We both ran into the same speed bump, just a little bit different form, and it was auxiliary cadre for Tau. I picked up my loss round one to Matt Merle, who was the winner of the whole thing. So, I got to taste my defeat early and then crawl my way back to 2-1. But, I said it in our little, our pre-interview. That was one of the things I wasn't really looking forward to. And, for good reason. I have a hard time dealing with all the loan op. That trash is just better than my trash. But I definitely was not able to pull it out this weekend. That is for sure.
But we had a blast, and I think both of us can say with utter confidence, Uncle Bobo's tournament is the invitational of the year. If you manage to get an invite to that, that is the golden ticket of good, classic Warhammer fun. So why don't you give us a run through of the tournament as a whole for you, Lane? You took Imperial Guard, obviously, and you took what detachment? And then why don't you just give us a little run through of who you played into?
Yeah, of course. So starting off, obviously guard, combined arms. Quick rundown of the list. Had a Dorn tank commander, a Lehman Russ tank commander. I wanted to try out the plasma this time, and I tried out plasma sponsons. Never doing that again. I hated it. I want my Meltas back. Never doing it again. It wasn't bad though. It worked kind of, but Meltas are just better in all ways, shapes, or forms. Being able to shoot into your own combats if you're ever tied up is just too valuable not to have. Moving on from there, I had a regular Dorn. I had a Lehman Russ Exterminator that could stack AP, a Hellhound that could ignore cover for the rest of the shooting phase. 2 units Acadians helped me get some sticky down. There's a lot of battle shock shenanigans and stuff going around, as well as just generally wanting to be able to leave and run forward with resources late game and not have to worry about my primary. A unit of Catachans in a Torox, which is a staple of most guard units. Sly Marbo for a little bit of lone op and scoring. Ursula Creed for some orders. Some Rattlings for some midboard presence as well early on. And a unit of Attilan Rough Riders followed up by a classic 3 Scout Sentinels because they are point for point one of the most annoying units that guard can take. And then lastly, can't leave home without my 6 Bullgrin. That is just a staple for almost every list I run. They are never not a problem for people to deal with, it seems like. And it really solves a lot of problems for guard when it comes to melee matchups that are a little more difficult. You can just kind of throw them in there and they're a pain. Going through my matchups, like I said, started off round one against Matt. Super great guy. I just spent the whole weekend playing my homies, people I've known for over a year and are just some of my closest friends in 40K. Got to play Tau Auxiliary Cadre. It really was one of those games where I felt like I needed to try to deal with all of his trash because I knew he just out primary me and stuff. And on their turns, they really have the ability to just yeet themselves past and deny you on the start of your turn. Having that fall out of combat at the end of the fight phase is just so problematic. But when it comes to dealing with them, the big thing about Auxiliary CAD is the fact that anytime aliens are next to actual Tau units, they just get 18-inch lone op. It makes it very difficult to go interact with them without being punished. He had 2 Ghost Keels with Meltas, as well as 2 Hammerheads with the ion cannons. And so he didn't really struggle too much between that and a lot of his other, the Rampagers at dealing with some of my armor, and my trash just completely outclassed by a lot of the Kroot stuff. And it's not hard for him to pick it up at all. So we played take and hold to start with, and I just kind of moved out and tried to keep him at bay while dealing with stuff as best I could. If I could get rid of some of his anti-tank stuff, then I could try to, from that point, deal with all of his trash more effectively and not be punished. The problem was I whiffed a little bit into the first Ghost Keel. I didn't expect to kill it, but I bounced and did next to nothing, which really hurt. And in return, he ended up trading back 2 of my smaller tanks, the Hellhound and Exterminator. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. I felt like I kept trying to deal with things, and it just wasn't going quite as well as I needed it to. And I kind of overcommitted to a couple things and undercommitted to some others. And just as I tried to go through it, I just started slowly falling behind on that trade game with the trash, and his trash just really outclassed mine, took it off the board, and then he just kept falling through. And those end of turn moves just really do make it problematic to deal with them. And I'm sure Phil is going to tell you all about how he felt about it in his game when we get to that with John. And by the end of it, he just had cleaned me off the board, and I was just really struggling to get points. And his 22 units I think he had in that list just really shone, and it was a really tough matchup. After that, round 2, we got to play Scorched Earth. I got to play my good buddy Jason, who we had on earlier. He was trying out the Firestorm. It was a really fun game. Got to hang out. We don't get to see each other that often anymore since he lives in New Mexico. So first time we played in person in a while. Marines, the Firestorm tech, I do think it's there. We talked through a lot of the changes he's planning to make, but one of the things that almost all of my guard lists are very good at dealing with is 3 wound bodies. I can put down Marines like they're nothing. It's a lot of output coming out of those Dorns, the Exterminators and stuff, and so I was really just able to more effectively use my trash, I felt like, early in that game and kind of zone him out. And then he did have, we talked about it, he put his Eradicators maybe out of place and spread himself a little wide with Space Marines. And Space Marines are one of those armies against Guard where you want to try to kind of just roll all together and pick a side and really push it. And stick together so you can trade back effectively. And so I was just able to kind of split him a little more than he would have liked. And from there, I just kind of snowballed it past there. But it was still, I think there was a lot of tech in the list. I still really like Firestorm. And I think we'll have Jason back on to talk all about how that is going to change for him and what he's going to look at. And then lastly, I got to play Bo. We had another interview with him that has or will be coming out, has already come out, and we got to play into Nurgle Demons and the Plague Legion, and that was a super cool game. That was my first time playing into him. There is a lot of spice within that detachment, and it really, he has found a way to really make the best out of all the Battle Shock shenanigans I felt like that are in that list. He brings a lot of toughness, and it was a 1-point game. It came down to the wire on Purge the Foe. My big takeaway from that game was, as we progressed, I kind of jailed him, and I don't think I needed to do that. It was Purge the Foe, and I was denying him almost all primary for the first 3 turns. And I was kind of just limit testing. I knew demons in general would struggle to kill tanks to a certain degree, and so I kind of just put myself out there and tried to jail him. And he ended up bringing it back insanely well and made it a really, really tight game at the end. But going back reflectively, as long as I'm denying the hold more in that matchup, he doesn't have the shooting, and so I can just make him shamble across the board. I had a turn where I picked up about 25 Plague Bears and stuff, and if I just would have made him walk across the board, I think it would have been even more favorable of a matchup instead of trying to just really jail him and keep him cornered. Purge the Foe doesn't really support that play style, so that was one of the big takeaways for myself as a player this weekend, is just keeping in mind what the mission is. I have no need to keep him out of the midboard. Come to the midboard, I can then sit back and just have more pieces to jail you with in the later turns instead of doing it kind of from the start. But that was my big takeaway, especially. But amazing games all the way across. 3 of my closest friends in 40K, so I can't ask for a better weekend. Phil, let's run through how your weekend went.
Yeah, it was interesting, right? So Final Day is an army that I have a lot of experience with, and I feel very comfortable with. It has a lot of tools, tricks that really fit my playstyle. And for our watchers out there that are talking about like, oh, I really want to get into competitive 40K, and they're going down the meta dashboard and they're looking at all these lists. There's nothing wrong with going out and saying, okay, this is a list I want to play because it just won LVO. Like I'm gonna go take that list, that Death Watch list that just won LVO. I'm gonna take Ben Neal's list that was runner up as second, and like absolutely, there is nothing wrong with doing that. But I will put an asterisk next to it and say every person's playstyle is going to be a little different, and you need the right units that fit your playstyle, the right army that fits your playstyle, because it may just not be the right army for you. Final Day is definitely one of my favorite armies that I'm enjoying running at the moment, and it has a lot of tools and tricks that I need in this meta right now. And foremost, I played everyone that I played Right? Yeah. Everyone that I played, I had never played before. So you got to play all the homies. I got to play new people for the first time, which was definitely fun. Charles was my first opponent. He was playing Star Shatter Necrons. Thankfully, in the build up to LVO, I have a lot of reps into Star Shatter, and I was very prepared for what it is that they are doing. So there was really no surprises there. I have a lot of screening units. I'm able to pick up his trash very easily. And then the second Star Shatter doesn't have scoring units. They have to put DDAs or Silent Kings out there, and I have the tools to deal with those as well. So it's a very uphill climb for them because one, we trade and then I come back, and then two, when I do come back, I do pick up the things that you actually care about. So it is very difficult for Star Shatter Necrons to get through what it is that I'm dealing out on final day. Next, I played World Leaders. I played Alec from up in Denver. We've never played against each other, like I said, but I am once again very familiar with World Leaders. When you don't participate in 3 phases of the game, like you don't have movement shenanigans, the advance and charge, I can math out. I could know exactly where it is that they were going, and then my screens are kind of vicious for World Leaders because I have a fights first screen with the Metamorphs with the Locust, and I also have access to some pretty decent Overwatch, as well as my mining lasers with Blast. Really like seeing Exalted 8-bound in groups of 6 because those 2d3 shots with Blast apiece mean on 2s mean I just pick everything up. So it is quite scary for a World Leaders player going into me because, once again, I also fight, and sometimes I fight first with the Lictors or Death Leaper or Hybrid Metamorphs, and it means you can't charge me. And if you can't shoot me and you can't charge me, I will have my way with what's going on the board. So that was a game that I was very comfortable with, which was good. Going to my final game, into John Kilcommons. He is a globally ranked player. And when I talked about it before on the podcast, you will not find a more competitive group of individuals in terms of high ranked players in their faction, in the world, than up here in Denver. We have access to so many incredible players, and John is just one of an exceptional many that we get access to play in. And he was also running Auxiliary Cadre. Now, his Auxiliary Cadre was a little different than Matt's. But I've played into Matt so many times, I knew what was coming. I could see it. I could hear them. I could see the tanks. I could see all the rampagers and the crew. And unfortunately, in the final mission, it's Purge the Foe, which we both hate. He doesn't want to give up his crew, and I don't want to give up my GSC, either my Acolytes or my Lictors or anything like that. I don't want to give it up because I don't want to give up Killmore. It turned into a very close game that came down to a few crucial moments that were impactful. So first and foremost, there was an opportunity where John could have gotten Killmore. He pushed out to kill 2 units and unfortunately bounced on both of them, resulting in me getting the Killmore that turn. The reason that's impactful is because I went first in that game, and I had to find a way to get points back because otherwise I was going to lose. First, in Purge the Foe, it is incredibly difficult because your opponent, 1, knows how many kills there's going to be, and 2, bottom of 5, will almost guaranteed get hold more. So you are playing the game. You're playing the game on an 8-point deficit, almost guaranteed. So it's like, okay, I got to find 8 points plus something, right? Because it's not going to just happen once. Because they have the opportunity to go second, it means they'll probably get Killmore at least one more time because they'll know the number they need to get to each round. Now, the interesting thing about this game is John obviously is a very good player. He knew that as well, and we played an incredibly cagey version of 40K. We weren't pushing out. Our secondaries weren't driving us out necessarily, and we were only putting 1 or 2 units out to go score the things that we needed to score, and that was it, because we did not want to do anything else. And it came down to secondary draws. I missed on a critical turn that I could have gotten an additional no prisoners target, and I missed on that turn. And then on the final turn, because I had a lead because he had given me an 8-point swing. The problem was he went bottom of 5. He got 1 secondary, which was cleanse, and then he was able to get kill more and hold more and beat me by 2 points. So it came down to 2. John ended up finishing second. I don't know how I feel about Tau being 1 and 2 in a leaderboard. It makes me feel kind of uncomfortable because I remember back in the days when Tau dominated the meta and they just shot everyone else off, and that's all I ever saw. But seeing them now, the detachment is good. It's got a lot of tools and tricks. I felt more prepared for it than probably you did because I have a lot of reps into Matt and I have a lot of reps into like that style. And John plays a completely different style of Tau than Matt does. Matt's is very aggressive. He puts the suits in your face. He puts the rampagers out there, and he's aggressive with them and aggressive with them. John, in combination with the mission, we both played incredibly defensive because we both knew that this game was going to come down to the wire, and because he did slip up once, it did let me in the game, which is what made it close. So, yeah, pretty pleased. I would have loved to get a win there at the very end and finish 3-0, but that's just sometimes the way 40K happens. Sometimes you play into great opponents, and sometimes you catch a loss. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I think that was a great recap of kind of how our games went. Any changes you are planning to maybe make to final day? I feel like you've got a lot of reps in with this list and are really kind of happy with where it's at.
What the major standouts to me were, for sake of points, I didn't bring a Death Leaper to this tournament. I like Lictors. I think they're fine. The lack of invol kind of sucks, but they both kind of serve the same purpose. In this next one, if I do end up coming up to Wyoming, I'm probably going to bring a Death Leaper. And I was bringing 3 Rock Grinders with 3 squads of Flamer Acolytes. I'm probably going to drop a Rock Grinder. Not because it's not good. I love them. Right? Rock Grinders hitting on 3s with mining lasers, it just buffs up a part of the game that I really struggle with, which I've talked about on the podcast before, which is toughness 12 anything. Right? Toughness 12 monsters, I don't have the ways to deal with it because that means I'm winning you on force and I'm relying on dice. And I don't have access to rerolls in shooting and I don't have access to rerolls in hitting. The only way I could do that is by taking a Jackal Elfis. And against my better judgment, like I am tempted to bring one because hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s gives me so much, like such a good opportunity to actually convert. The problem is, I'm paying 55 points for one opportunity to reroll once to hit, and not even reroll all hits like some Space Marine players might have out there. So I don't think I take a Jackal Elfis. I don't think I rely on it. It doesn't necessarily feel great. So I definitely think the Death Leaper is going to find their way back in the list. And in this list, I didn't run Pure Strains and a Patriarch. And I think a lot of people who run Final Day are going to be screaming and shouting, like, how could you not take that unit? It's so broken. Like, the Patriarch is so good. Pure Strain, it's going to have dev wounds, and you can make him reroll. I was like, you're right. If I take a 10-man, which is, let me just do some math real quick. Okay. So a 10-man of Pure Strains is 150 points. The Patriarch is 75. A lot of the times you're going to take the no Overwatch strategy or enhancement on that. So that's 225, 235 points. For 235 points, I get a huge brick of 10-man Pure Strains with a Patriarch, and with the meta now being around the 1-inch wall, like being 1.1 inch away, and making that fight happen further and further out, I have found, against good players, they will not give me the opportunity to put 10 Pure Strains and a Patriarch into a squad of, let's say, Marnius Calgar and a company of heroes. It won't happen, because they're going to line up along the wall, and I'm not going to be able to fit in there, and I fight with, like, the Patriarch, but I don't get to fight with the whole unit. So it's like, well, if I'm going to spend all the points to bring that unit in, it's not worth it taking a 10-man. A 5-man is nice because it does have advanced charge. A 5-man is nice because it's like, I can do that. I can send it out to kill a unit of JPI maybe, or tie up something turn 1. I am probably going to switch back to it, not because I didn't feel like there wasn't a moment where I was like, man, I really wanted a Patriarch and Pure Strain. Except for in John's game, because those crew, a 5-man of Pure Strains and a Patriarch would have just picked up, right? Like they would have screened me out. That's fine. The Patriarch and the Pure Strains would have gone in there, picked something up, and then piled into the second thing and tied that up as well. But then he obviously moves after end of fight phase. So that advanced charge unit I think would have been valuable. So I think I just go with a small mini missile of 5 Pure Strains and a Patriarch, and then bring the Death Leaper back in, which is almost exactly like the list I took to LVO.
Gotcha.
Close,
yeah,
but
I think
a few other chinks changed.
Yeah. Sounds like some great things to switch up, and you must have had the recipe right the first time.
Yeah, it's so close, and I talked to that players all the time when we talk about lists and list creations. It's like you'll test a list at a tournament like an RTT, which is kind of the purpose, right? Like I'm there to have a good time. I'm there to test the list. But when you play 3 games or 6 games or 9 games back to back to back to back, it highlights those inefficiencies that you don't necessarily get when you play once a month or once a week, even, right? Like you're not going to see it. But when you get like, oh, this unit didn't do really good, and then I see it 5 more times, I'm like, that unit is inefficient and I should not bring it, and I will not bring it again until something changes. So what about yourself, Lane? What are you thinking of changing? Am I gonna see 12 Bulgrin on the board?
As much as I would love for that to work, trash is just king right now, and I can't commit to it. I would love to, but man, it just for 220. They don't do that job well enough to be a pain. There's still such a problem that I think 6 is still very worth it, especially, they come out a lot later than I used to send them. But when you talk about putting something out in the mid board that your opponent has to deal with, or it will tie them up for most armies, Bulgrin are going to sit there and you're going to be stuck with them for 2 turns, or you're going to fall out and have to deal with them, and then you're not going to get an activation out of that tank. Some people do have a way around it, but in general, those tough bodies just fill a role that guard really struggles to fill otherwise, in my opinion. I do think Catachans and Toroxes and stuff can do similar things, but it's mostly more of that, like, try to deal with my primary strength in those regards. For me, the big changes I really am looking forward to, I'm probably not going to be playing this weekend at the GT since I will be judging and TOing, but I think in the near future, my new Krieg engineers will be in, and those seem legit. So can't wait for those. Having a free grenade on a 3-up, and then the free grenade strat once per turn is very strong. Looking forward to trying some of them out. I've been on the fence about Slimarbo. I generally have enough other little things that I can do some scoring with, and I have enough stuff in general that I don't really need Lone Up for my natural. Anytime I've put him out in the middle, nobody has had a problem dealing with him. So I don't know if I'll go with him. I think spending those points generally towards things like an additional Catachan unit, or upgrading more things towards those engineers. The other thing I do think I'm actually gonna, I've been thinking about is, I don't think, I took the Lehman Russ Commander because I was like, well, I can save those 30 points instead of taking a Dorn Commander, and I can use that to spend somewhere else. But in general, my biggest takeaway was, like, with your orders definitely being tied to your tanks now and having to kind of roll together, you have to be a little bit more aggressive with your tank commanders, because you can't have Leontis just do your ordering kind of farther ahead. So you're going to have to be pushing up more. The chances you get tied up are higher. So the nice thing about that extra 30 points with the Dorn is you now have access to so many more non-blast weapons that can go into those combats to free yourself back up again, which I think is very important. And for 30 more points, I mean, just the output, in general, I originally I had kind of thought, I can save those 30 points, and I still think Lehman Russ commanders are good. The Fire on Death is still strong, but most opponents are just like, oh, well, I'll go tie you up, and then it won't matter. You won't get it anyway. So I do think that's a change I'm going to look towards doing. I had 18 units. It's probably going to get cut down to 17 or even 16, just to accommodate, the extra points for the tank commander, the extra points for those engineers. But those, I think, are some of the biggest changes I'm looking forward to, is having those 2 things in my list once the engineers are in. I think they trade extremely well early. Free grenade strat, free mortals anywhere are just nice to have. And then, potentially I might look at converting something into another transport, just because I think that is still another good resource for guard, of being, making people commit more resources to getting you off of those objectives early. So those will be some of the changes I look to make for my list in terms of playing combined arms. I do want to finally take some time and start actually putting together some lists in some of the other detachments, but I haven't gotten that far yet with the new codex, but I definitely need to. I've looked over a lot of what they're running, and it's been great to see some of the stuff people have been running for Recon and Hammer. That it's all looked very interesting, and I do want to try those out eventually. But as far as combined arms, I think the lethals are too hard to pass up, so it's probably going to be what I stick with competitively for the foreseeable future. So
No thoughts towards Bridgehead?
I enjoy playing 40k socially too much to play Bridgehead, so I don't want to be sweating my ass off just trying to move all of it. It's a very technical army as well,
It is, yeah, for sure.
and it takes a lot of reps. I'm struggling to get enough reps to really get my lists, hammered out before we can go to these RTTs and stuff. Just with so much going on lately, so I want to play something that just does the thing. It generally feels okay and has a similar play style no matter what I'm playing into. I don't have to worry to go, oh, it's knights. I'm playing for OC now instead of killing things, or vice versa. It's one of those things where I can show up. I have kind of a set play style, and it doesn't really matter what you're playing. I have enough to either take a board space or screen because you're melee. It's just a very standard way to play guard, and it takes a lot of the stress of having to be like, oh man, what are you running? How does that affect me? It doesn't. I play guard, and in general, that's been pretty nice. I will say the Oxcad is one of the things that I do have to play a little different into just because of those shenanigans. And the lone op, I think, is a thing that guard generally struggles into. Making us have to come forward with those tanks to deal with you is problematic for us. It makes us get in riskier positions than we really want to.
Sure.
But in general, that's what I'm looking forward to. More combined arms, keep it simple, and just have good fun. Any other detachments you're maybe looking at going back to or trying out, or is it just Final Day all the way?
So I think Final Day is the best GSC detachment. I think it is the most like big brain to play. I think Host of Ascension is good. I don't think it's as good as Final Day, especially like over the span of either a team tournament or a 9 round like LVO experience. I understand that a Host of Ascension list did get into the Shadow round, which is awesome. I love GSC being up there, but I'm relatively confident that Final Day is very, very good. I also run Custodes, and I have ran Talons and Shield Host and Solar Spearhead multiple times. They're fun. I have the units, I have the Contemptors. My Custodes army is by far my favorite army to play just because it's on the Odyssey. It's beautiful. Like, it looks so good. So I really enjoy putting it on the board. My problem with Solar Spearhead is it's a bit one-dimensional. I don't get much enjoyment out of playing it. And for those that are watching, like, if you spend so much time in this hobby and doing all these things, like, I want to put an army out that I really enjoy, and that isn't necessarily there for me. I do enjoy Talons. I do enjoy Shield Host. I think with the benefits to bikes now, in terms of them getting a little better, and I think Talons and Shield Host were good before, I think there's some real value there in terms of what I want to run. I was tempted to bring Custodes this weekend up to Wyoming. So maybe just to give myself a break, but I really like Final Day. And I have some goals this year in terms of like trying to finish high in the ITC rankings for GSC or finish high just in general. And to do that, you got to play GSC. You got to do well. You got to do well in tournaments. So yeah, we'll see.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, I'm hoping, fingers still crossed, that you will make it up here to Wyoming this coming weekend. It'll be good to have
Me
you.
too.
We'll see if that final day squeak out that GT win and just knock it off the to-do list for the year, and
Yeah.
just then you just hang out the rest of the year. You don't even have to practice anymore.
Yeah, it must mean you're
the team
good. If you
doesn't
win
need
one
you,
GT,
sharp. Yeah,
I,
you got your dub, you're good.
I am like I do want to do well if I do come up to Wyoming because there's going to be some really good players. Some 40K Fight Clubs guys are going to be up there, so it's just going to be it's going to make a world of difference, right? Overall, playing the more competitive games possible. So I want to end this with one thing, just so we talked about it in the pre-show talk of like when you play competitive games against really good players. So John Commons, he is a U.S. recognized, internationally recognized player because he is very, very good. And I'll use a term, and we're going to have a whole show based on this, of playing clean 40K. So when we say clean 40K, that doesn't mean like cheating or doing things incorrectly or anything like that. It means optimizing every movement. And when you play against the top players in the country or even at your local GT or RTT, and they're very good players, if you don't play clean, you're going to put yourself out of a game before the game even like gets rolling. So in that game with John, that was probably one of the cleaner games that I've played, and obviously John plays an incredibly clean game, and it's just one of those things that makes the difference, right? Your movements, your actions, your trading units, every single thing has a purpose, and it shows and it stands out. And to do those things, it's just like I knew exactly what John was going to do because I know his stratagems, I know the army, I know what they're going to do, and John knows what I'm going to do. And we're talking every single thing out. Yep, if you move here, I can see this. I can't see this. This angle is cut. So we're almost predicting each other's moves at that point, and that's how clean and sharp those games are. And the more often you play into those, the more familiar you are when you're going to be in those scenarios. Because I remember the first time I played against like a very good player, they like, okay, how far does this guy move? Okay, he moves this far and he does this. And he's like, okay, well, you're going to move here, and then you're not going to be able to see this, and you're not going to be able to do this. And he was calling out my movements and exactly what I was going to do before I did them. And at first, I was shocked. I was like a little rattled. I was like, this dude can read my mind, like all of these things. But it's the difference between like that high level player who has lots of games and all the factions and knows what you're going to do and knows what questions to ask, right? So we'll talk about it. We're going to have a whole episode on like how to play clean 40K for those that want that. But I cannot wait to get another rep into John. I will bribe the TO just to get us paired up again because I want a rematch and I want it now.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a very similar. I played John about like 8 months ago at Clickstermania, and I think it was almost the exact same situation. I like lost by like 1 or 2 points in just the final round and stuff, but it's such a great game. Yeah, can't wait to go over those things. We're gonna have plenty more videos coming as far as things you can learn how to just play at that higher level. Some of those extra tips and tricks, as Phil was talking about. That's gonna be all to come here on Master Crafted, and we can't wait to share the knowledge and share the love of the game of 40K with everybody who's nice enough to give us a follow and a like and a subscribe. You just gotta all the things. We're so happy to get to share this information with you and share our experiences, and we hope you guys keep coming back.
And don't forget, victory isn't given, it's forged.
You damn right. All right, we'll see you guys next time.